The way I am made is not different from the way the universe is made. What is the way we see the universe? It's like this. In the yogic principle, the universe was like this. But this is how it was. So we call this Anant, that means it's infinite.
It's
infinite.
Infinite, yeah.
Infinite, I'm sorry. We're Indians. Today, modern science, the methodology is to come up with a concept, make a theory, build a mathematical backbone, and then look for elements of proof which could confirm those things. I believe that's a methodology. The methodology of mysticism or yogic way of looking at things is to turn inward and look at what we are made of. This is coming from the fundamental, in science you would say an assumption. In my experience I say, from the fundamental knowing, the way I am made is not different from the way the universe is made. I am just a tiny bit, but still you can sit here with these little eyes, you can look up and look at a galaxy. This is because this is made the same way and we are able to reflect that. There are some studies, people say that they have looked at the vision and mindscapes of some insects or something, some experiments have been made where they're saying their vision and their thing doesn't go beyond their survival requirements. So this capability we have because we are able to reflect the entire universe within us, if we wish. In fact, everything that we are seeing is only a reflection. Right now, these people seem to be here, but we are only seeing them the way they are reflecting in the firmament of our minds. There is simply no other way to see it. So having said that, the fundamental instruments of perception is just this. How we keep it. Different people can see different things based on how sharp they keep themselves. When I say see, I'm not only talking about visual apparatus, we see through the five senses and more. So, in this context, the way we see this is because of your cosmology, inevitably the other day, the boss didn't allow you to speak about time because he said, no, it's time. But you had spoken about space, which I see personally as a consequence of time. Well, let me just articulate in simple words. What is the way we see the universe? And see if how many overlaps are there. And if there are things that don't overlap, we can examine why they don't overlap. It's like this. In the yogic principle, the universe was like this. This is usually represented as an arborist, a snake, a cobra running into each other, mouth and tail included, and a hood rising here. So, this is not the European arborist, I know, they make it a circle. But this is how it was. So we call this Anant, that means it's infinite.
It's
infinite.
Infinite, yeah.
Infinite, I'm sorry. We're Indians.
You invented the concept.
No, I want to tell you it's not a concept. This infinite or infinity was like this. The nature of infinity, I don't have to tell you, but for everyone, if you make infinity plus 10, it's still infinity. Infinity minus million, still infinity. so your mathematics don't work. You do plus, minus, multiply, divide, nothing. So it was like this, you could do nothing with it. Then it unfolded and became like this. Then we call this shunya.
Oh.
Shunya means emptiness. It became empty. What was infinite became empty. This is very important to understand this. What was that which is infinite? Was it not empty? We could not even call it empty or full at that time because it's infinite. There's no plus minus to it, no multiplication and division to it. So it was this way, it uncoiled itself to become nothing. Nothing means we must put a hyphen between no and thing. It is a no thing, but it has a presence now. This presence, I'm assuming, maybe this presence is what the modern scientists are calling as dark energy or dark force or whatever. But it's very appropriate because we call this shunya or kala. The word kala means empty, the word kala means darkness, the word kala means time, the word kala means space. All these four things became somewhat manifest because it became a kala. So this is here as emptiness, but we call this infinite space. Must mark my words, it's infinite space, not time, because there is no distinction. It is time which is unfolding to become space. So once it became kala like this, you can see it as emptiness, you can see it as time, you can see it as space, you can see it as the first manifestation of that which doesn't have a form. Anything that doesn't have a form is also called kala. So, what was infinite space became zero, now plus one is plus one, minus one is minus one. Suddenly, there is no physicality yet, but there is a mathematical foundation for its physicality. Now, once it became empty like this, the word shunya is, in terms of written word, for the first time it's seen about 400 BC. There are documents where clearly the word shunya and the mark of a zero is there. It traveled to Arabia in early, the next part of how we count time today. Because those divisions are not there in our minds, because we have to communicate with the English-speaking world, we have also come that the cut-off date is somewhere 2000 years ago. Otherwise, we don't have those cut-offs in our minds. So I'm just saying, what are you calling it now? AD? It's not AD anymore, what are they calling it? CE. It's called CE now, Common Era or something.
Ah, CE, yes.
Yeah. So, in the Common Era, in the first, second century, or maybe by third, fourth century, it traveled to Arabia because Indian traders were maintaining trade routes from India, right from the bottom of India, that is southernmost parts of India, right up to Damascus, Jerusalem, Aleppo. Even today, Aleppo city is supposed to be 8,500 years old, and that city was built by taxing the Indian traders. So, the live transaction was a daily business, people were traveling quite a lot. So, it traveled to Arabia where they called it cipher. The word cipher again meant empty. This cipher came to Europe, in Latin they called it Zephyrium. That went to Venice, where it was the hub of many things happening in Europe, and there they called it zero, and the English called it cipher. These days nobody's using that word cipher. When we were growing up, it was common to use the word cipher in English language, but I don't know in…
As a code, as a secret code.
Oh, is it?
Well, the word cipher is to do, in English,
Zero.
is connected with…
Yeah.
coding, but this is a different context.
Yeah. We used to use the word cipher as a zero. When say, it was used in a derogatory way, oh, he's a cipher, he's nothing kind of thing. So, this aspect, once it became nothingness, but it was a firmament of tremendous existence, but without physical form. Then we go into a more, a dialectical way of expressing this, where we say, we're calling this kala as a being, a large, formless, not large, infinite, formless being. Infinite cannot have a form, of course, so it's a being. And he breathes. He was inhaling. Inhaling is a long process, maybe running into millions or billions of years. There are calculations for that. I'm not the mathematician for that. And when he exhaled, it's not that he has nostrils, he exhales from everywhere. If you did not have nostrils, actually even our skin is it's not only perspiring, it's also respiring, So we're breathing through our every pore in the skin. Like that, when he breathed, that created a certain amount of energy. That we call as Shakti. Shakti came out of him. When energy came out of him, then this firmament of nothingness, which is a powerful force, it started reverberating initially, then caused ripples. Those ripples led to cyclical movements. So with these cyclical movements, the first physical forms came out and it all over burst forth. As these cycles became more and more complicated, from whatever we call as electrons, protons, atoms, planetary systems, universes, all these evolved because of the cyclical movements. Fundamentally, we see physicality as a consequence of cyclical movement. Our very birth is because of the cyclical movements in our mother's bodies, otherwise we wouldn't be born. That is a yogic doomsday you would like to know. So studying these cycles, feeling these cycles in our own bodies and studying these cycles, things were figured out because we were more interested in how to transform life here and how to make a human being go beyond these cycles. As I said earlier, the cycles of time are such, they can crush you. Why? In their childhood they were like this, and now they become like this, a lot of people. Time has crushed them. People think it's their experiences of life, this and that. No, that is only an excuse, it's actually time which has crushed them. Or the same time could trap people. They're okay, but they're bored and they don't know what to do with themselves.
Do you mean crush them in the sense that they die?
No, that will anyway happen. But when they're alive, they feel crushed by time. The cycles of time just crushes them day in and day out. Many people wish the sun doesn't come up tomorrow morning, but it comes up and they have to go to work. It crushes them. In United States they have, thank God it's Friday.
Yes.
It means they don't have to wake up tomorrow morning.
Yes. TGIF we used to do. Yeah. At Caltech we used to have the TGIF celebration every Friday.
So, we want to break these cycles. So, any cycle naturally has a centripetal force and a centrifugal force. If you get caught up in the centripetal, you get crushed. If you ride the centrifugal, then you're released, a tangent is formed. So, to attain to this tangent is the goal of life in the East. We call this mukti, nirvana, moksha, whatever. Essentially, we want to ride the physical cycles in such a way we are liberated from the physical cycles. How did people see these things? How did people come up with these things? This is always a question. Well, how did the modern scientists see something? Today everybody is talking about Hubble and whatever the other one, John Space?
James Webb Telescope.
James Webb Space, whatever. What are these instruments? These instruments are just extensions of our own senses, only because we have eyes. Only because we have eyes, the telescope means something. Otherwise, what is a telescope for a man who has no eyes? Simply nothing, all right? It's just a pipe. With a few mirrors and maybe lenses or whatever it is, it's just a pipe. It's a metal pipe, we can use it for something, but you can't use it because inside they've blocked it with so many things.
Quite expensive.
Expensive pipe. I agree with that. So I'm saying only because we have eyes, we are making instruments which will extend our eyes.
Indeed.
So, this extension was done in so many different ways. One of the things that we did was that we created energetic forms which would make us look very, very far. Today, unfortunately, it is all being misunderstood and misrepresented, but there were instruments with which we could look very far, we could open windows into the cosmos. These we called as our deities. These are not gods, there is no concept of God in the East.
Are you talking about modern telescopes or ancient
Both.
metaphor?
There were no ancient telescopes.
I meant metaphorical.
Yes, they saw things by creating energetic forms. You have definitely heard of, because he was in your neighborhood, Ramanujam.
Yes, of course, yeah.
So when people asked him, some 3,900 mathematical formulations he came out with, which is still being debated and discussed and people are trying to understand what he wrote. When people asked him, he was dying of tuberculosis. He sat on his deathbed and simply poured out mathematics. When people asked him, how does this come? He said, my Devi, which means my goddess, bleeds mathematics.
Ramanujan was at my college, Trinity.
Yes.
But before my time, so I never met him. And to me, that is a fascinating example of how one can get information about the universe, not just through the intellect, but through inspiration. As you say, he thought he had his information.
If I should correct that, sir, I'm sorry, I'm intervening. You never get information through your intellect. You get information through your senses, and there in the intellect you mess it up.
Well,
I mean to say you match it with the old information and try to make sense out of it.
I wouldn't like to admit that we always mess it up, but I think
No, I'm saying we're trying to make sense out of it. But normally what we think is sensible right now is actually blocking us, because what we think is smart, we can't leave. What we think is stupid, we can leave easily.